What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Stick. DJ, Bucky, Rhett with you on a Monday as we look back on the weekend that was Week 15. Buck, is this the last time we see Rhett wear the IU hat, or is he going to proudly be wearing that hat next week after they knock off Notre Dame in the college football playoff?
Well, the one thing I know about Rhett, he's going to wear the hat regardless. But look, this is interesting. A lot of people have this one pegged. It's almost like March Madness, where people are always taking the 5 and 12 line. I feel like people are just lining up taking the Hoosiers because they feel like there's this advantage that they have over the Fighting Irish. I can't wait to see it.
I don't know. I don't know how we're going to stack up with all that top-tier talent and all that prestige and touchdown Jesus. I don't know how we're going to do it. I really don't.
He's
Brett's going to be there. He's going to be there, so it's going to be taken to another level. Win, it's going to go to another level of joy and exuberance. And if they lose, he'll be way in the dumps. But we'll have plenty of time to get to the college football stuff later in the week.
Yes, we will.
We've got a lot of NFL to get to. First of all, here, the game of the week may be billed as the game of the year, based off where these two teams were in separate conferences. But Buffalo, Detroit. That it ended up being a high-scoring game. Shouldn't be a surprise. Buck, my first takeaway on this, I'll get it to you and go around the horn here, but we can hit it from all levels, was two things. Number one, Josh Allen, and I posted this, when the kids were little and used to have a birthday party and you go out in the backyard and they're like 6, 7-year-olds and I'm the all-time quarterback with a Nerf ball, that kind of felt like what it was watching Josh Allen out there. Like, try and blitz you, just kind of sidestep him, get out of the way. Just looks like he's on another planet in terms of talent and ability. That was my first thought. My second thought was with Josh Allen, watched him the last 2 weeks. I haven't looked at the architecture plans for this new building, this new stadium in Buffalo, but maybe we should make that a dome, if not already, because seeing what Josh Allen and his skill set does on a fast track indoors, they're going to score 50 points a game.
Yeah, he is unbelievable. I mean, his MVP campaign is like a runaway freight train right now. The last 2 weeks where everyone had opportunity to watch him on the main stage, he has dominated. He's been nothing short of brilliant. And I think what Josh Allen is, and I saw this stat, like what he's had 3 straight seasons where he's had 35 total touchdowns. Like then he's had like 2 seasons of 25 passing touchdowns and 10 rushing. I mean, just remarkable numbers for a guy who was a dynamic dual threat that we didn't even think was a dual threat when he was at Wyoming. He is one of the fascinating draft stories that we will talk about in years, because I've never seen anyone do what he has been able to do and accomplish what he's accomplished when we didn't really see some of this stuff from him when he was at Wyoming.
You know, and I think when you look at Josh Allen's impact, you really have to look at it kind of holistically, because I think if you talk about the Bills' defense, right, and you look at their 11 starters and you're like, who's their best, who their 11 best? Well, Josh Allen's not on the field, but he's probably their 12th best defender, because like he put so much pressure on the opposing team's offense that I feel like it helps Sean McDermott in that defense kind of figure out the way that they want to attack. The Lions came into this game as one of the best rushing teams in football with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. I mean, they only ran it, let's see, about 15 times in this game. And look, having Matt Milano back on the second level certainly helps Buffalo a little bit. But man, when you can force Jared Goff to drop back and throw it, 60 times in the game, yeah, you're going to have a game in which, you have Greg Rousseau and Ed Oliver dominate in pressures. And 34 pressures in this game on Jared Goff. Every other play, he was getting pressured. And I think, that offensive line for Detroit, showed a couple of cracks in what's been a pretty good foundation for this renaissance under Dan Campbell. So I think ultimately, when you look at Josh Allen's impact, it's not just on the offensive side of the ball, Teach.
Yeah, on the Detroit side of things, though, they're going to say we scored 42 points. Like our defense couldn't get off the field. I mean, for whatever issues we had protecting the quarterback. I mean, that's the bigger concern for me is that, and I've said this in terms of matchups. Like we're to the point now we can start looking to the playoffs and the matchups that are going to come. And I'm telling you, man, like the matchup that does not work for them in the playoffs with the injuries they have, and Aleem McNeil is now lost for the year. Aiden Hutchinson's out. David Montgomery on the offensive side of the ball. But to me, it's the defense. If they can't get pressure, and they've lost 2 key pieces of that defensive line now, and you have Matthew Stafford come back home and they have a rematch in the playoffs without a full deck along the offensive line, we've seen what Matthew Stafford can do to teams who can't rush the quarterback. And you saw it in this game what Josh Allen did to that Detroit defense. that to me, Bucky, if we're trying to take this and move this forward of what this looks like, man, it's starting to get a little troubling there with the injuries mounting up for Detroit.
Yeah, the funny thing is the season is long. We talk about it being a marathon, and we also talk about how you want to be peaking at the right time going into the tournament. Unfortunately for the Lions, it seems like they may be limping into the postseason. And when it comes to matchups, the defensive injuries really make it troubling when you think about some of the teams they could line up against. You think about the LA Rams and all that they could do. You talk about Matthew Stafford. But let's talk about some of the other quarterbacks that they potentially could face. I mean, they are a team that is struggling defensively because they don't have the ability to rush the passer, and they may not have enough able bodies to cover. What could be a remarkable season for the Detroit Lions could end up being a one-and-done appearance in the postseason, just to the war of attrition that they appear to be on the losing side of.
Yeah, they've got Minnesota coming up at I believe it's week 18. Tampa Bay matches up. We'll get to Tampa Bay in a minute, and what they look like a hot knife through butter the other day. I mean, that offense is rolling. So it's interesting to see put records to the side when you get in the postseason. It's kind of who's playing their best, and as they're getting there. And obviously Buffalo has some warts on defense, but man, their offense is humming. And Detroit, now they're starting to see a few cracks here as we come down the home stretch. Another great matchup. It was the game of the week in the state of Pennsylvania. I can promise you that. Pittsburgh and Philly, a game that Philly, it looks lopsided from the score, 27-13. It was pretty competitive for a long time. But Rhett, we were on Thursday night the other day, and everyone wants to talk about A.J. Brown and how upset he is. And I'm like, wow, this is news at 11, huh? Receiver not happy with targets. Like, this is very specific to one receiver and one team. Haven't seen this before.
Yeah.
And what do they do?
But
the
squeaky
Eagles
wheel
come
gets
out
the grease.
and come out and fed him the rock, and got his buddy Devontae Smith involved as well. And the passing game looked just fine there in Philly.
Oh, look at the hugs, right? Look at the dance that they celebrated with. But look, I think when you really look at this thing, and I know Saquon Barkley didn't have the impact and looked like he was a little banged up in this game too, right? But this is the right form, it feels like, for the Eagles offense, the right formula, right? It's 11 targets for A.J. Brown, 12 for Devontae Smith, 10 plus for each of them. Saquon Barkley got 19 carries in this game. I think you'd probably like to see Jalen Hurts come down, into the high single digits or 10, 11 carries and give Barkley a little bit more. I know that there was an availability issue here too. So you take all that into account. But that's what you want, right? You're talking about 32 attempts for Jalen Hurts, and then you're talking about about 41 rushes when it's all said and done. Kenneth Gainwell got in there with 7 too. Like, that feels like the way that the Philadelphia Eagles should be operating, and they did it against a really good defense in the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it was pretty fun to watch. It was a dominant effort, it felt like, when you compare the two offenses.
Yeah, look, a really dominant effort when you look at the offense. And, Red, I think you're right about the formula. They had 42 rushing attempts. They were able to throw the ball. They got the ball to their primary playmakers. The funny thing is Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, it wasn't like they averaged a ton of yards per catch, but they were able to be involved. Both of them went over 100 yards. I think Devontae Smith was at 9.9. A.J. was a little more than that. But it's interesting how the squeaky wheel gets the grease. The thing that I'm worried about, though, Philadelphia Eagles, and they're bickering and they're fighting. Just the little camera caught Nick Sirianni trying to go over to Jalen Hurts.
What's that? What are we doing?
Then trying to go to Jalen Carter, but then Clint Hurt kind of got in the way and was like, hold on, don't go talk to my guy. I just wonder about Nick Sirianni, because whenever they put these things there, he certainly doesn't look like the head coach. He looks more like the figurehead. I just don't like the way that kind of portrays Nick Sirianni as the ultimate leader of the squad.
See, I think it's their identity. I honestly don't mind it.
Be on the edge.
It's their identity, and it's a city. It's a city that lives like that. Like, it's a city that is on it's on 11 at all times. And I think, to me, let me give you a nugget. Let's go. By the way, let me give you a saucy nug here, presented by Wendy's, our first saucy nug of the show here. When you have all this conversation, is there dissension and is there issues in the locker room? And there's a lot of question marks for one. I'm always curious how those teams going to get out the gate. How are they going to rally around each other? What's it going to look like? Well, the Eagles had 148 total yards and 10 points in the first quarter. Those were both season highs. It's the first game they've had 100-plus total yards in the first quarter of the whole season. It's the most total yards in the first quarter of a game by Philly since Week 12 of 2022. So it was kind of like they were chomping at the bit and couldn't wait to get out there. It almost feels like, Sirianni kind of, to me, embodies that when you're in the tunnel and the guys are trying to fight their way to get on the field. They're ready. You got to wait, hold on, just wait a second here. Like Sirianni's like that guy. Like he just wants to get out there and get into it. And it's an intensity level that can lead to some of those confrontations you've seen on the sideline. But I think this particular team responds to it, I'll give you another example here, Rhett. And Buck, follow that up too. But like Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio is a gruff, kind of yell at you, mean coach. How did that work in Miami with that group of players? They didn't respond to it. In Philadelphia, they're kicking tail every week and they can't get enough of it. So some cultures and environments, they thrive off that kind of edginess and conflict. And I think Philadelphia, because of the city and the culture there that they've established for a long time, I think that's just who they are.
That's such an
interesting
there's
probably
take.
Something to that too. Yeah, go ahead, Buck.
No. I was just going to say it's just an interesting take. Go ahead, Brett.
I think, I think you could say that, DJ, and you could probably feel pretty good about it. But then you look at last year, and obviously that was not a positive situation when you had a lot of that drama kind of creeping back in. Have they figured out a better way to kind of compartmentalize it and use it for good on the field? Maybe so. And maybe that's the growth of a team year over year. But you do kind of wonder if there is a little bit of a boiling point at some point, or if this is just the way that they're going to be. And if that's it, then, find ways to kind of squash it. It happens on Sunday, squash it on Monday, move on and see what happens the next Sunday, right? What's going to bubble up next Sunday?
Go ahead, Buck.
So I want to go on the other side because I think some of that kind of bubbled up on Pittsburgh, like just some of the disappointment from watching their main players not be able to make the plays that were there for them. Najee Harris dropping the pitch when it appeared that they were going in to score. They were in the red zone, had some things humming. Just their inability to make effective tackles on the perimeter and those things. And what I like about what Mike Tomlin talked about is, like, at the end of the game, he just said, hey, this is one where, like, it's a learning lesson in this. We got to get better. We got to perform better. We got to tackle better. But you still feel good about where the team is. The problem is you're in the midst of a tough stretch where, man, you go from one heavyweight fight to another heavyweight fight this weekend coming up on Saturday when they take on the Baltimore Ravens. Pittsburgh still has got to bounce back quickly, and we'll see what they're made of in terms of how they respond against the Ravens.
Yeah, well, they're in the tournament, so it's going to be interesting to see how they finish out the year. Are they, like we were talking about previously, are they going to sprint into the playoffs? Or are they going to limp into the playoffs? A lot in front of them there, so we'll see what that looks like. Let's get one more in here before we take a quick break. Green Bay, Seattle. I went through that video this morning, Buck, and let's just say Seattle had issues blocking the Green Bay Packers, to say the least. I don't know if I went through the pressures. Laumea, who was starting at guard for Seattle, who's kind of kickstarted their run game out of Utah since he's been put in the lineup. He's done a good job in the run game, but man, pass protection is an issue. And when you have the dudes that they have with Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark and company, that is not good. Look, you know me, I'm not one who looks at PFF grades. I look at the stats and sort the video and watch the video. But when I was watching the pressure video and I scanned to the left and I saw his grade of 1.6, it did stand out to me as a grade that I had not seen before when it came to an offensive lineman.
That's on a scale of 100. Let's just clarify that.
Yeah, that's not. I've never seen that before. So, but it wasn't just him. They had issues blocking Green Bay, and I guess we can look at it, Buck, from the Green Bay side of things. Of, they got some dudes up front. I've been touting this Seattle front and how well they've played, and they in this ball game it wasn't close. Green Bay their front dominated the ball game.
One of the underrated acquisitions in the offseason was Jeff Hafley leaving his head coaching position at Boston College to be the D coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. And what he wanted to do was simplify things, wanted them to play aggressive, wanted them to be turnover obsessed, and we're seeing that. But a lot of that stems from the pass rush. And the thing that you have, to me, when I look at the Green Bay Packers, you have the marriage between the front office and the coaching staff. If we're going to draft and develop and build through the draft and the players, then the coaches have to put the players on the field and let them do it. We've talked for years about the number of first-round picks that the Green Bay Packers have committed on defense. Well, now you're seeing that pedigree come through because they're in a scheme that allows them to really showcase their talent, their athleticism, and they are getting it done. And that Sunday night game really was a showcase to how talented the Green Bay Packers are. We talk about their offense all the time. Last night was an opportunity to really rave about their defense and how destructive and dominant they can be.
Yeah. I think I agree with where you guys are coming from. Just watching that game, live, you could kind of feel it, right? And look, they knock Geno Smith out of the game. Sam Howell has to come in and finish that thing. And I think that just that kind of tells you a little bit about the physicality of this game. And look, the way that the Packers have kind of reinforced that from a personnel acquisition standpoint. I mean, you look at their drafts the last couple of years, right? Look at Devontae Wyatt, look at Quay Walker, look at Edgerrin Cooper, who was one of the players of the game in this one. So like they have clearly made that an emphasis personnel wise, and then feels like they've certainly got the fit now with Jeff Hafley running the show as their defensive coordinator. The other common theme that I found, especially in these first three games that we're talking about, and actually in the next two that we're going to talk about, it definitely rears its head as well. And look, game flow obviously dictates some things when it comes to your play selection on offense. Like, when you're looking at the Bills-Lions game, obviously the Lions were down in that game. You're trying to throw it to keep pace, but that's also something that, as we were talking about, the Bills forced you to do. The Eagles forced you, to come out there and try to match them. Same thing with the Packers in this game. Just looking at run pass selection, the Bills on attempts outrushed the Lions 34-15 in this one. Steelers and Eagles, it was 41-17. Packers and Seahawks, it was 34-16, where it was just like they were committed, and then they were getting that kind of tough physical play on the defensive side of the ball, and then they were kind of reinforcing it on offense down the stretch as they were trying to kind of, hold on to those leads in most of those cases. But I thought that was just kind of interesting to see how those three big games kind of went in terms of offensive play selection.
Especially as we come down the home stretch. Look, shouldn't be a surprise. As the weather gets colder, as the games get more crucial, those teams that can run the football, man, that makes a big, big difference. All right, it's time for Cruising to Victory presented by Royal Caribbean. And the first half was not a cruise for Tampa. It was the first half where the Chargers early on were going toe-to-toe with them. But, man, in the second half, it was a boat race to say they were cruising in a boat. See, I tied those things together. Anyways, this offense,
squirrel finds enough.
And we'll get to the defense and the blitzing and how dominant Vita Vea is and some of the other pieces there. But I want to stay on Tampa before we get to the Chargers. Buck, when I saw this offense live and in person, they have some elements that you don't appreciate till you see it. First of all, Mike Evans, just give him the gold jacket already. I mean, like he's the best physical wide receiver in the NFL and probably has been for his entire playing career. He is so big and he is so physical. The Chargers had no answer for him. We start there. Baker Mayfield is very confident, comfortable in this offense. This offensive line can move you in the run game. Tristan Wirfs is an absolute monster. The tight ends, I think, are the most underrated tight end group I've seen this year. From what, like, you watch them on tape and you see them in person with Otten and company. They are excellent blockers. Yes, there you go. They are physical. They're blockers. They can run after the catch. They're complete tight ends, and they're creative with how Liam Cohen designs this offense, and then they can hammer away, be physical. And in the second half, as you guys were referencing, Rhett, you were bringing up about the rushing attempts for these teams.
You want to know what it was?
All of a sudden, those body blows. It was over. It was. I think the Chargers had 14 or something.
It was 11, 39-11.
Yeah, 11.
Yeah.
Yeah, 39-11. There you go. It was a second half where they did whatever they wanted to do, and they were explosives everywhere in the run game, the pass game. I came away from that going, I've been thinking of Tampa as kind of a little bit of a fringe team in the playoffs. We focus on those name brands, what's going to happen with Detroit, specifically the Detroit, the Eagles. I'm like, man, I'm seeing that up close and personal. I don't know that I'd be too excited, Buck, if I saw Tampa in the playoffs the way they look right now.
But yeah, the thing about Tampa is they changed right after the bye week. The last 4 games since the bye, they've had over 150 rushing yards in each of those performances. As much as we talk about Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans and how this team was previously constructed with Chris Godwin, they were more of a throwing team. They have embraced really the physical element of their personnel. They are a team that can grind it out. You saw them get dirty. They can produce explosive plays on the ground. And then when you have Mike Evans on the outside, you always have the ability to produce that explosive chunk play through the air. Baker Mayfield talked after the game about how we had to flip the script on the Chargers. We had to out-physical them because that's their calling card. Well, if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fully embrace that, if that's who they are, that becomes their identity. They're going to be a team that really lives in the bully ball world. Man, good luck dealing with them because their physicality, their toughness, and their ability to produce explosive plays on the ground and through the air, a lot to deal with when you're getting ready for them in a single elimination tournament.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about this a couple of times, and you obviously got to see it now, in person, DJ. But again, you look at commitment to draft resources up front on the defensive side of the ball paying off, right? Vita Vea, Elijah Cansey, Logan Hall, Yaya Diaby. Those are big, physically framed dudes.
Joe Tryon
right?
Shoyinka is another big athletic guy.
Yep, definitely. And so, I think it's like, all right, who do you want to be? Where do you feel like we're best in terms of, the type of player we need on that side of the ball? And they've had some continuity on that side of the ball in terms of scheme for the last few years, as well with Todd Bowles, even going back, obviously to Bruce Arians. So it just feels like they've got a nice marriage between, understanding what the scheme needs and then, Jason Light and his staff and that whole crew going out there and executing that and finding some real fits and some real productive players. And obviously Vita Vea certainly starts that conversation, DJ, up front.
Yeah, he's a freak. And getting ready for that game and studying it, I mean, it's some stuff that nobody else does. I mean, we use the unicorn word probably too much, but there is nobody like him that has his combination of size, power, quickness. And he wrecked Bradley Bozeman in this game. He just gets constant pocket push, which is a nightmare. You got to try and run away from him when you're running the football. You mentioned all those other guys. Elijah Cansey's a really, really good player. They have a good front, man, and it's a team that's thoughtfully constructed by Jason Light, and it's impressive.
DJ,
to me, it was the biggest difference between what I saw, like what I thought I was going to get. And then sometimes you come out there and say, "Oh, that maybe the Chargers didn't play well." I mean, but the Chargers have been in every game this whole year. They haven't been treated like this by anybody. This team came in here and physically whooped them in every single way possible. It was not. I mean, it was impressive, Brett.
Yeah. I was just kind of going back to it. I was like, do you remember? Since you brought up, Mike Evans in the gold jacket, do you remember the draft conversation around Mike Evans when he was coming out of A&M? I felt like it was like, man, big physical, specimen, but probably a little.
That was it.
A little question of speed, maybe a little raw,
line.
but
straight line, a little tight. Yeah.
What are we talking about? 11,000 yard seasons.
What was his draft year?
2014.
Jeez. Yeah.
10 years,
right,
man.
It's
still doing it.
I think that got.
He's a 7th overall pick.
Updated NFL.com. My old reports got pulled, so I'll tell you what. I'll tease that.
I'll find that. Just kind of curious.
Our next pod.
See what that looked like. Considering how productive he's been.
Yeah, and that was a draft. That was a Sammy Watkins draft. So Mike Evans was my 7th overall player in that draft. I think he was
where he went
12th or 13th pick, or was a 7th pick. There you go. Yeah. Hindsight probably was too high on Greg Robinson, but we'll leave that discussion for another day.
Hey! You never know what makes them tick. You never know what makes them tick.
Yeah,
missing a little something there, but no, he was impressive. The other thing, Buck, I think sometimes with running backs not being there, we don't appreciate some of the other aspects of it. J.K. Dobbins, this run game has not been the same since he's been out. And the other thing that is way underrated, he is one of the best pass protecting backs in the NFL. And with the way the Bucs blitzed, and they blitzed the Chargers, that's I believe the second most time that Herbert's been blitzed in his entire career. It was over 60%, I think 63% or something like that, that he was blitzed in this ball game. Well, that's Todd Bowles being smart. You don't have your starting running back in there. You've got a rookie in Kamani Vidal, and I've got one of the best off the ball blitzing linebackers in NFL history in Levante David. Have fun with that. And that was a major problem. So I think some of these issues with the Chargers can get corrected a little bit with some health, provided JK can get back before the end of the year. But that's a big hole, man.
Yeah, it is a big hole. To go back on your thing with Todd Bowles, I don't think he's seen a blitz that he's never liked. I mean, he dials up pressure. And one thing that you have to know, when they're back in the corner, they're bringing pressure all around. And the crazy thing about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, DJ, we could talk about it. Like if we were mock drafting and doing whatever, we were saying, you know what, Tampa Bay needs some corners. It's like he doesn't care what he has on the perimeter. He is going to dial it up. He's going to bring pressure. He's going to bring heat. And he's going to dare your quarterback to be able to find the open man. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are problematic. But I'll say this. I'm not worried about the Chargers. I think sometimes you kind of have to have one of those beat downs to kind of have the wake-up call. Jim Harbaugh talked about this is the adversity. We got to work our way through it. They'll work their way through it, and I think they'll be better because of it, because it will make them better prepared for the postseason now that they've gone through something like that against Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Lost 4 in a row, now won 4 in a row. Pretty good turnaround.
Yeah, Tampa. Yeah, no question. And look at the wins Tampa has on their ledger too. Look at the teams they've beaten. They've amassed some quality wins on there. Beaten some good ball clubs.
Washington, Detroit, and Philly.
Yeah, not too bad. Detroit and Philly, the top 2 teams in the NFC. Let's keep it moving here to, I guess we can call them Rhett's Denver Broncos with Bo Nix starting off a little slow in this thing, but picking it up, getting going. But to me, this is about that defense as much as it is about their offense, Rhett.
Man, that was obviously they were aided by Adonai Mitchell throwing a pass in this game, which I don't know that's going to stick in the playbook. But Nick Bonito sure was happy to take that the distance. Man, the turnovers were just insane this week. I felt like, and this was one of those games. The Broncos forced 5 turnovers here and moved to 9-5. And look, they turned the ball over a bunch themselves. I mean, Bo Nix, had 3 turnovers, 2 of them in the second half, but he stayed clean in the fourth quarter when they were making that run. And this thing really, to me, came back to, the momentum shift by taking 7 points off the board with Jonathan Taylor letting the ball go for the goal line. They scored 24 unanswered. The Broncos did after that. I just, like this play here, great run by Taylor, and just kind of loses focus right at the end. And I don't understand that. Wasn't the only time it happened this week either. But I did want to go back to some of the quotes that Sean Payton had about Bo Nix, because this was obviously not the piece de resistance for his rookie season and his Offensive Rookie of the Year campaign, which we've been touting on this show quite a bit. I think when you look at that, I thought it was kind of cool. Sean Payton was like, yeah, look, it's not all on Bo. I made some dumb calls in this game, and I'll fix that, and I'll be better. I'll put him in a better position to succeed there. And I think then he also, mentioned, let me get the exact quote here. I think he was talking about the moxie and the poise that Bo Nix had. And I remember, just a couple of weeks ago when the Broncos kind of began this run, I was talking about folks that I'd talked to there in Denver and just talking about the maturity that Bo Nix had. Like when things, are hitting the fan and things aren't going well, he's the same dude, right? So you can always look to the quarterback, even as a rookie, to kind of reset and settle down, because that he's got the right temperament to handle things, not just when they're going well, but when they're going poorly, even when he's performing poorly. So I just think for a rookie, and again, we come back to the experience factor, the guy's seen a bunch of football already, right? And is prepared for moments like these, as tough as they might be. And I think, Sean Payton has a real high degree of appreciation for that part of Bo Nix's game, Buck.
Yeah, no, there's so many things to talk about. One, I'm just trying to figure out, like, how many more highlights or lowlights do we have to see of guys dropping the ball before they get in the end zone? I don't understand the fascination with it. I don't. Maybe Red knows, like maybe that was cool down in Louisiana.
I don't know.
Growing up. I don't understand it. But man, that handily game for the Indianapolis Colts. And For the Indianapolis Colts, like I want to say they wasted a performance where they were clearly in control of the game and they couldn't get it back. And look, there are people that are upset in Indianapolis about Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard and all those things. But to me, this team is good enough to be a playoff team. But for whatever reason, man, they have hit the bumps along the way that's probably going to keep them out of the tournament unless something drastic happens for them over the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, it appears to be on the outside looking in at this point in time.
The Texans defense needs to play really well to finish this one off. Dolphins out of timeouts, down 8, 1:44 to go. Tua takes the snap. Tua with pressure, throwing downfield to his right, and intercepted. Stingley again! That's going to do it! The Texans are going to beat Miami. Stingley's second pick seals the deal. And Houston will get its 9th win.
I want to start us off on this game, and Rhett, take it from me. The focus on Stroud, and Stroud's not playing as well as he did last year. He's turned the ball over more. I broke that down on TV yesterday, just some of the things that you see. And some of it's just, look, he's a young player. He's just going to keep learning and growing, and you go through a little thing like this. I'm not concerned about that. But I think in all the discussion about Stroud, we forgot about the guy who was picked right behind him, who was his teammate on the defensive side of the ball, who's taken his game to another level in Will Anderson and what he's done this year. I think he's in double-digit sacks now, but he shows up every week. When you watch him on there, he is every bit as advertised. It doesn't seem that long ago where there was the discussion about, is it going to be Tyree Wilson or is it going to be Will Anderson? Think about that. Think about how these little discussions, Buck, these little decisions that we sit in draft rooms and debate, they have a long consequence now when you got to pick all the way up there, and you get the right one. It makes a big difference.
Yeah, it makes a big difference. And the thing about the Will Anderson conversation, what should have been easy is, one, the football character was outstanding. When you talk about the work ethic, the leadership, what he displayed at Alabama, you then look at the production. What is not to like about what he displayed during his time with the Crimson Tide? But then back-to-back years, this dude has been phenomenal. And he really continues to challenge himself to take it up a notch. And even though offensively the Texans haven't been what we thought they would be, defensively, they're every bit as good as some of the top teams in the league. To me, it's about them just being on the same page, because when they're locked in on defense, D'Amico Ryans, man, has a unit that can pitch shutout. And that is really going to be key, because as we think about the postseason and who they may be lined up against and how it may play out, matchups are everything. This defense gives them a chance to win. And if C.J. Stroud can just find some of what he displayed last year, yeah, this team can be a tough out.
Boy, yeah, there were definitely some Dolphins offensive linemen who took some L's in this game. I mean, it was, I mean, there's just no way around it. I mean, like that group up front for the Texans just absolutely gets after it. I mean, Danielle Hunter was one of the best free agent acquisitions of the offseason. And then obviously Will Anderson just continuing to ascend. And we kind of, I mean, like, it was, what was it? The year before that Will Anderson was drafted, we were talking about him being the number 1 overall pick, right? Because he was that dang good. And then, you know, we kind of had that first overall pick fatigue a little bit. You kind of got like bored with Will Anderson just being really dang good. And we're like, oh, maybe he shouldn't be the first edge rusher off the board, right? Well, let's remind ourselves to not get bored with really good players. Because that was, I mean, obviously the Texans didn't end up taking him there at 3. But when you look at what he's doing in tandem with Danielle Hunter, and then, you know, some of the stuff that they're getting from their interior guys as well, like Tim Settle. Like, how many people thought that Tim Settle was going to be as big of an acquisition as he's been? Tommy Togiai from Ohio State's getting in there and rotating in, you know, on the interior along with Folo Fatakasi. So, like, they have found, you know, kind of similarly to what we're talking about with the Bucs and the way that they've found the pieces that fit. I mean, the Texans up front have certainly found the pieces that fit what D'Amico Ryans wants to do on defense.
Yeah, no, it's been fun to watch this whole group come together. Stingley was another one who might have had a little fatigue with prospect fatigue.
That's right.
With what he was. He got a couple picks in that ball game. Buck, Kansas City, Cleveland. I'll give you kind of the cliff notes here with with Kansas City having the offensive line issues. Joe Thuney kicks out to left tackle. Myles Garrett still had double-digit pressures. They still battered Mahomes. Cleveland couldn't do anything offensively. They turned the ball over a zillion times. Kansas City's defense generated those turnovers. Give them credit for that. They have been very consistent. For whatever the offensive issues have been throughout the year, the defense has been there every week. But my point I'll get to you. It looks like Mahomes, mild high ankle sprain, kind of day to day, week to week. They've got a couple games. They've got a Saturday game followed by a Christmas game on Wednesday. So they've got kind of two quick ones coming up here. But I don't know that they can afford to if he's able to get out there, it's tough to sit him because you're going to lose home field to Buffalo if you do. So they've got some decisions to make there with Mahomes. But the point I'm getting at is this shouldn't be surprising. The way Mahomes has been getting hit behind this offensive line, that this is the risk that comes along with that.
Yeah, it is the risk. They haven't been able to sufficiently protect him, and it was only a matter of time before he got banged around and I won't even say knocked out, but before he got banged around and had an injury that potentially could threaten his availability down the stretch in the regular season. Here's what we do know. We'll talk about it he's questionable, he may not play. He's going to play. That's what number 15 does. He takes the ball whenever he's able to do it. He would have went back in the game if he had to on Sunday, but this is what he does. The thing that you got to do, I know that you're playing musical chairs. It's not ideal this late in the season to be shuffling the deck when it comes to the offensive line. Andy Reid and that staff, they got to come up with answers. Who are the best five they can put out there to protect number 15? They need to figure that out quickly because I don't think you can keep playing musical chairs as you go into the tournament.
I mean, it does feel like it's the ankle injuries. I mean, just continue to mount for Mahomes, and you do kind of wonder. Yeah, all right, mild high ankle. Yeah, but is there a recurring effect here that kind of limits, just how much better you can get in the framework of a week to week rehab and recovery situation? I'm like you, Bucky. I have no doubt that he'll be out there, but you do start to wonder, how much can you expect of him when you have needed all of him and more in an unusual year. Well, maybe it's not unusual, but in a year in which they have been less than, what we typically expect from the Chiefs on offense. So I don't know on this one. I know, Carson Wentz will prove to be valuable if he's got to go. Obviously came in and finished that game off, but I'm not going to doubt Mahomes. I'm just going to be intrigued to see how it all works out, considering how mobile he has had to be behind that offensive line, and how much that will continue with that group being, a little bit patchwork. And I would imagine Joe Thuney, after going up against Myles Garrett a couple of times in this one, is probably going to be very comfortable moving back to guard whenever that time comes.
You think?
I mean, I would be.
Yeah.
Not to say that he didn't hold his own. I mean, I'm sure he got some wins too. Dang.
Time for Play Football presented by New Era. Max Crosby hit the field with New Era to show youth players what it takes to be relentless in the NFL. Check out some behind the scenes from the Pass Rush Clinic, where the Raiders Pro Bowler broke down some techniques that make him one of the NFL's best. Thank you to New Era Cap, the official cap of NFL Sidelines.
What's up, y'all? I'm Max Crosby. I'm here with New Era and Play Football. He's already going to be waiting for me. That's why get off is so important. That was good. Because when you're rushing, you want to win now. Moving. Good job. The best advice I ever got, protect your square. And then I'm throwing this elbow like I'm about to break a brick wall down. It's just about being under control and keeping your eyes straight at the elbow or ball. Whoa! We good? You have to turn into a fighter, and that starts with your hands. There's a counter off of everything, but you want to be throwing the punch first. I'll see you on the field.
Chance for Spencer Rattler to get into the memorable book here. If he can lead this team down for a tying touchdown. Here we go. One play. 3 seconds left in the game. Spencer Rattler out of the shotgun. Looks to throw. Stands. Does throw. Caught. Corner of the end zone. And that's Foster Moreau. The Saints have climbed all the way back, but not yet. They're down one. And they're going for two. So here we go. Ball's at the 2. 2-point conversion. 20-19. You win it or you lose it. One play. Rattler rolls to his right. Now throws incomplete. Incomplete in the corner of the end zone.
All right, we're going to go rapid fire here through these last few games. Rhett, Washington, New Orleans. One of those games that look kind of bad and ugly, and all of a sudden you look up at the end of the game, you're like, holy crud, this ended up being a good game.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you credit Darren Rizzi. I mean, the Saints are playing hard, and they're playing hard down the stretch in a season that likely has no postseason berth on the back end of it. And I think that says something about how they respect him. I will say that they certainly got a boost at the end. The clock mistakenly stopped at the end, allowing them the extra time to get down there, spike it, and get that that touchdown that would have allowed a tying extra point or a potential go-ahead 2-point conversion. They opted for the 2 and didn't get it. I was just very happy to see the old fantasy stack of Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin showing up for me in the fantasy postseason. 2 touchdowns between those two. Yeah.
Is that enough to get you the win, though?
Oh, it is. You better believe it. Yeah, you better believe it.
Are you sure about that?
I'm winning all fantasy competitions.
Bo Nix had 3 touchdowns for me on my fantasy
3 picks
team. I had McConkey. That's fine. It still scored a bunch of points. McConkey got in the end zone. Had a solid day there. Who was my BTJ got? BTJ, yeah. Buck. What did BTJ do?
Might have been a good one for you. Might have been a good one for you.
He had a monster game. He had over 100 yards. He was doing his thing. Best rookie receiver in the 24.
Don't count that rookie fantasy win just yet.
All right,
Buck. Cincinnati, Tennessee. Tennessee, not no bueno for them as they bench Will Levis in that one. But Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, they're putting up some points, man. They're not dead yet.
Yeah, they're putting up points, but Joe Burrow is frustrated. Everyone knows the competitor that he is. The fact that they're having to put up all these points and defensively, they're still having problems even to score down on their end, particularly against a team like Tennessee that was struggling with Will Levis. Joe Burrow's frustration continues to get the best of him. We saw in the little interaction that he had with Zach Taylor, despite having the firepower and the weapons that they have offensively, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, guys that can get down, guys that can spit out those 100-yard games like the ATM machine. They don't have enough to win and to be a playoff participant because their defense is lagging way behind. I understand the frustration that Joe Burrow has because this might have cost him an MVP run because the numbers are certainly MVP caliber from Joe B.
Yeah, speaking of MVP, I think Joe Burrow belongs in that conversation with Josh Allen and with this guy right here in Lamar Jackson, who just continues to put up big numbers, 5 touchdowns, 4 or fewer incompletions for the 3rd time in his career. So that's most NFL history, if you're wondering. That's a good saucy nug for you. The Ravens 9-5, and all of a sudden now you've got the Ravens and the Steelers in a little bit of a dogfight here for this division there in the AFC North. The Giants 2-12. Their quarterback for 25 is not on their roster. Now it's just a matter of can they show a little bit of life to show that you've got some competitive fight, but then let's also not win a ball game and jeopardize our draft stock. So that's the challenge there for the New York Giants. But look up, and all of a sudden the Baltimore Ravens are starting to hit their stride a little bit, and they are built for this time of the year, and Lamar Jackson's playing at a very, very high level. All right, it's time for the Monday Night Football preview presented by Hard Rock Bet, and we've got a twofer tonight here, Buck. Starting with Chicago and Minnesota. What are you looking forward to in this one?
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the Minnesota Vikings, and if Sam Darnold can continue to do the wonderful stuff that he's done under the direction of Kevin O'Connell. Sam Darnold has been outstanding this season for the Minnesota Vikings to the point where you're like, well, maybe they should keep him. I know J.J. McCarthy's ready and waiting, but let's see if we can keep this thing going. When I look at Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, T.J. Hockenson returning to form, Aaron Jones behind them, there are a lot of things that are really working for the Vikings, but Sam Darnold is the X factor for this team as they get down the stretch. They're angling and inching closer towards toppling the Detroit Lions. I want to see if they can take care of business against Chicago Bears and Sam Darnold be the special player that he's been this season.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm looking for competency from the Bears, which we haven't seen in the last few weeks, but which I guess sets the bar fairly low. But for the Vikings, I mean, the more like we go forward on this thing, the more this feels like the 49ers from a couple of years ago. right? You've got a top pick rookie quarterback, and you haven't really seen him yet. And now you've got this guy that maybe you didn't count on taking the league by storm. Obviously, Darnold is in a little bit of a different situation in terms of acquisition compared to Brock Purdy. But dang, they're playing so good. It makes you feel like why mess with a good thing here? I think this will be a really interesting decision for the Vikings as we move forward here.
I'm looking forward to watching the Bears and seeing if we can see more of the second half San Francisco, Caleb Williams and company, than the first half drought that we saw with that offense. And I want to see 1-2 run. That's what I'm keeping an eye on this game. 1-2 run. One's not there, and two's not there. I'm running. I'm not hanging in the pocket if I'm Caleb Williams and waiting for number 3, because number 3 is going to result in you getting a hand up after you've been peeled off the ground by this Minnesota Vikings front. So I want to see, can you operate a little bit quicker with your decision making there, Caleb, in that offense there with the Bears. Rhett, Atlanta and Vegas. Go ahead.
Brock Bowers.
Oh, is he on your team? Is he on your rookie team this week?
I don't know that he's on my rookie team this week. I just that's what I want to watch in this game, and that's what else do you want to look for? I mean, like, this is if you're a Raiders fan, like, that's the price of admission for you, is going to see Brock Bowers play, because he is an absolute star in this league already, and they just got to keep finding more ways to get him the football. And I know that obviously the quarterback situation has definitely been less than ideal this year. They are one of those teams where the quarterback is not on their roster either, and they'll be fighting with the Giants for that number 1 overall pick down the stretch here. Look, for the Falcons, it's getting late, right? It's time to make your stand. And Kirk Cousins has got to figure it out, or it is literally going to be too late with the way that the Buccaneers are playing, Deej.
Well, I'm just looking at it. The first thing I looked at, Buck, was where is this game at? Because if it's at Atlanta and Kirk Cousins is turning the ball over and not playing well, now this becomes a major national talking point when you can have some boos in the calls for Michael Penix. The fact that this is at the Raiders and they're having a down year, I don't anticipate it'll probably be a full house at that ball game. But the conversation still will take place if Kirk doesn't play better, Buck.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins is on the clock. Like, he has to play better. There are people that are calling for Michael Penix to get the ball. And if you turn the ball over to the level that Kirk Cousins has turned it over, yeah, your job is in jeopardy. I want to see how he bounces back, how he responds. And can he make the game easy for himself by making sure that Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algiers touch the ball enough that now you can create those easy opportunities on the perimeter. Big game for Kirk Cousins, a lot on the line. He needs to step up and perform well.
Well, and the other side of this is, we don't use the T word when we're talking about these teams that are not having good years. But if you're a Raiders fan, I don't know which team you're rooting for tonight. I think I know which one you should probably be rooting for, but that's taboo. So, we'll see. It's a lot on the line in terms of the draft order and the positioning, with so many teams so closely in the standings there as we march towards the spring and really the season of hope for a team like the Raiders, who need it in a big, big way. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Covered a lot of ground. We've got a lot to get to this week, including Rhett's Hoosiers. Are Bucky and I going to pick them to win? You have to stay tuned this week. We'll give you some predictions.
Research.
See you next time right here on Move the Sticks.